This show is produced by the Harwood Podcast Network.
Hi, I'm Cindy Harris, and we love making this show available to you free of charge. If you'd like to help us keep it that way, make a contribution to our Karma Jar or become a show sponsor. To learn more, visit our website. Today I'm baking a batch of pita bread. I got an email from a viewer, Zachary, up in Washington State, and he asked if I could show how to make pita bread. Well, this is a super fun and easy flat bread to make. Now, pita bread is a yeast bread, so there's a couple of ways that you can go about making it. You can mix it all together in a large bowl with a wooden spoon and then knead it on a floured board, or if you have a KitchenAid that came with a dough hook, this is a really easy way to do it, and that's the way I'm going to be doing it today. So I'm going to start by putting my dough hook on my mixer, and now we're going to get our ingredients in the mixing bowl. We're going to start by using some flour. Now I'm using all-purpose flour, and I'm going to kind of lighten it up with my knife, and I'm going to start by adding just 1 cup of flour into my mixing bowl. Then we're going to add 2 teaspoons of yeast. Now I buy my yeast in one of these large jars, so I'm going to measure out 2 teaspoonfuls. But if you get the little sachets of yeast, that also holds 2 teaspoons, so you could just use 1 package of yeast. But do add that to your flour. Then for just a little bit of sweetness, we're going to add a tablespoon of sugar. And our last dry ingredient is 2 teaspoons of salt. Now, I'm going to drop my dough hook in. I'm going to turn this on and let the ingredients mix together, but just for about 30 seconds. Now I've measured out 1 cup of hot water from the tap, and it needs to be between 100 and 110 degrees. So do make sure if it's any cooler, it won't activate the yeast. If it's too hot, it will kill the yeast. So it's important to take the temperature. And once it's the right temperature, we're going to go ahead and put that right in our bowl, along with 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Now we're going to turn the mixer on, and we're going to mix the wet ingredients with the dry ingredients just till they start to come together. That'll take about a minute or so. Now I still have a cup and a half of flour to add. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my 1/2 cup measuring cup. And while the mixer is on a very slow speed, I'm going to add the flour, but just a 1/2 cup at a time. So I'll do this 3 times to get my last 1.5 cups of flour. Now that the flour is all in, I'm going to turn the speed up, and I'm going to get the flour all mixed together. Now once the dough starts coming together like this, it's in a nice ball. If I were doing this by hand, I would now put it on a floured board and start kneading it for 6 minutes. Because I have my dough hook, I'm just going to let the mixer do that for me. Now after the 6 minutes, the dough here in the KitchenAid is nicely kneaded. If you've been kneading it by hand, it also looks beautiful. Now because my dough does not have a ton of flour in it and it's a little bit sticky still, I'm going to flour my board. And then I'm going to take my dough and scoop it out right onto that flour. Now I need for the dough to come together just a little bit more, and you can see it doesn't take much. Now when you knead, you take one hand, bring the dough over, kind of fold it onto itself, press it out with your heel, turn it a quarter turn, and do the same thing. What I'm looking for this is just to kind of come together and be nice and smooth, just like this. Now we're going to divide the dough. Now for that, I have a piece of parchment sitting just over to the side. I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit of flour on that, and then I'm using my bench scraper. You could also use a knife, but what is really nice about this is not sharp, but it cuts through the dough really well. So I'm going to take and I'm going to divide the dough into 8 pieces. So what I do is divide it in half, then each half in half again, and each piece in half. Now we're going to take each piece of dough and we're just going to roll it into a little ball and put this on our parchment. If kids like to bake in your house, this would be an excellent time to get them involved, helping shape the dough into these little balls. Now that all my dough is formed into little balls, we do need to let the dough rest before we roll them out into our circles. So I just have a clean dish towel, and I'm going to lay that on top and put the timer on for 20 minutes. Now, while the dough is resting, you need to get your oven preheated, and it needs to be hot. 500 degrees, and it's really important to make the pitas puff. The oven needs to be really, really hot. So go ahead and preheat your oven now, and we'll let our dough rest. Now, while the dough is resting and the oven is heating, we need to get some pieces of foil cut. I'm just using regular aluminum foil, and I'm cutting sheets that are about a little over 6 inches, about 7 inches or so, and I need 8 pieces. What we're going to be doing is we are going to be baking the pita bread on this foil. So we're going to be using that to put it in the oven. The reason we're doing that is if we use a baking sheet, what many times happens is it forms a hard crust on the bread because the sheet gets so hot. With the foil, it helps keeps these bread nice and soft, which is what we want. Now, once our dough is rested, we're going to start shaping them into our circles. So make sure you have a little bit of flour on your board and a little bit of flour on a rolling pin. You're also going to want to have your foil squares handy and a ruler. So we're going to start by taking one of our little doughs. I'm going to start by pressing it just with the palm of my hand to kind of get the shape going. And then I'm going to be using my rolling pin. Now, don't roll it all the way off the dough. The reason being is if you stop it just about 1/4 of an inch or so from the edge, you're not going to have the edges be, thinner than the rest of the pita. Now, when you're making pita bread, one of the things that's super important is the thickness. We want it to be about 6 inches in diameter, so that's about where it is, and it needs to be 3/16 of an inch thick. That is less than 1/4 of an inch. So if you put your ruler up there, that's about right. Now, once I have it in the shape and thickness I want, I'm just going to lift it up and put it right on a piece of foil and set it to the side. Now, in my oven, I can get 3 of these foil pieces with the pita bread on top of it. So I'm going to do just 3 of these at a time, and then I'm going to leave the rest of them covered up with the towel. Now, if you find you need a little bit more flour on your board, go ahead and do that. Now, the reason we want the oven so hot is because when we're baking this, it's that burst of heat that's going to create the steam that's going to make it puff up and make a pocket. Now, if we were to have the temperature not be so hot, then these would just bake like regular bread and they would be kind of doughy in the center, but that's not what we want. So do make sure your oven is really, really hot. Now, I have my 3 pitas ready to go in the oven. Now, there's a couple of ways you can get them in the oven. I have one of these giant spatulas, so I can just scoop it up like this. If you don't have one of those, you can also just take one of your boards, use it almost like a pizza peel, and I'll show you how we get these in the oven. Now, the oven is really, really hot, and we want to do this fairly quickly, so I'm going to start with the spatula. And I'm just going to tuck it right in on the shelf, close the door, and then I'll take these 2, and because they're almost like a pizza peel, I can just scooch those right in. Close the door. Now, when you put these in the oven, they're going to need to bake for 6 minutes. Now, while those pitas are baking, I'm going to go ahead and get 3 more ready. Use your tongs to pull these out. You can see how great they look. Now, once you have your pita bread here, you can see it started to create the pocket. We don't want these to create a crust. We want them to stay soft. So I've cut some more foil, and I'm going to wrap them up so that they continue to steam. Now here are all of our baked pitas. Let me unwrap one for you. And you just see the beautiful color. You know, many times when we buy pita bread here in California at the grocery store, it's just this kind of whitish color. And to be honest with you, many times it doesn't have that great a flavor. This has got wonderful coloration on it, and you know that's going to taste so good. Now, Zachary also asked me to share some ideas on what you could serve in pita bread. Now, I have to be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of slicing it in half and opening the pocket. The reason being is I find that it always falls apart because pita bread is really, really thin. So let me share with you what some people around the world do with pita bread like this. The really best thing to do, because it's so soft and malleable, is to take it and just bend it, almost like a taco shell. And then you can put all of your meats and cheeses and lettuce and tomato. You could put chicken salad or tuna salad. You could make gyros, which is a wonderful dish of, sometimes they use roasted meats or kebabs and put it down the center, and you could even put a cucumber yogurt sauce on them. It's fantastic. But you can see that if you have something like this, this is substantial. It's not going to fall apart on you when you're eating. Now, I also have to say, if you're not looking to do a sandwich type of thing, you could put some sauce and some mozzarella cheese and some basil, make a wonderful little personal pizza. You can also take the pita bread and cut it up into some wedges and serve it like with some hummus and use it as a dip. It's really, really good that way. Of course, you can also just take it and tear a piece off, and that's so good too. Well, I'd like to thank Zachary so much for writing in and asking me to show how to make pita bread. It's super easy to make, and I'm telling you, it's so much better than the stuff that you buy at the grocery store. You should really give it a try. Now, if you would like to give it a try, go to our website, go to the Daily Bread show notes, and I'll have the recipe there for you. I'll also have instructions on how you can freeze the pita bread and reheat it. Now, if you have any questions for me or any suggestions, please send me an email. I'll see you next time.